In earlier lessons, we discussed what is an adjective and what the function of adjective is in a sentence, and what's a verb and what's the function of the adverb in a sentence. However, sometimes some students might confuse between an adjective and adverb, and they might not know how to identify whether it's an adjective or an adverb. So in this lesson, we're going to discuss how to know that a word is an adjective and how to know that a word is an adverb. Now we've taken already that an adjective or adverb, they are modifiers. So they are modifiers. And they modify a word. In the case of adjectives, adjectives modify a noun or a pronoun. And their location is usually before. So that's before the word it modifies. And sometimes it comes after the word modifies in the case of linking verbs. So it follows usually a linking verb, right? And after that you have an adjective. And one common rule in adjectives is that adjectives are close to the word they modify. You cannot just put them away or far away from the word they modify. So adjectives are close to words they modify. Okay. So let's look at one example here on the left. Example. The hard work was worth our time. Now if you notice that in this sentence the noun work is being modified by the word hard, so that's an adjective which comes before the word modifies, and time is being modified by the pronoun our. In this case we can use also our as an adjective as well, because it modifies the type of time, or whose time is that. So you notice that the adjective is close to the word it modifies and comes before the word modifies, except if we have a linking verb. For example, I might say the work is hard. Okay, so in a sentence you have the subject, which is the noun, and linking verb followed by the adjective, which defines or modifies work. So these are the places where you can find an adjective modifying a noun or a pronoun. However, in the case of adverbs, first of all, they modify three things. They modify either a verb. Usually most adverbs modify verbs. They can modify adjectives, and they can modify other adverbs as well. And one special thing about adverbs is that in many cases they can be placed away from the word it modifies. Not always, but especially when it's modifying a verb. Okay, so when an adverb modifies a verb, usually it can be placed far away from the word it modifies without having a misplaced modifier. Okay, let me give you an example, and I'm going to use the word hard, which was used earlier as an adjective, but now I'm going to use it as an adverb. Okay, so for example, I can say we worked hard all day. Okay, so I'm going to just focus on the word hard here. That's the verb, and hard modifies the verb in this case. So you notice that in the sentence the adverb comes after the verb that it modifies. Okay, and you can notice that some adjectives do not change in the form of adjective or adverb, because we've taken already that in many cases adverbs end with ly, but in other cases they don't end with ly, so we cannot say hard or hardly, because if you change hard to hardly, you're changing the meaning. Hardly means scarcely or barely, which has an entirely different meaning. So hardly can be an adjective modifying a noun, or can be an adverb modifying another verb or adverb as well. Okay. So this is in terms of how they function in the sentence, where they are located, and what do they modify. Okay. We mentioned already that some of the adjectives and adverbs, they don't change from adjectives to adverbs, like hard and hard. And sometimes you might find the same word, like early, ending with ly, and can function as an adjective and can function as an adverb as well. Okay, let me give you one example. We woke up early today for the picnic. Okay, so in this case, early modifies the verb, so that's an adverb. Okay, the other example, we woke up early morning for the picnic. Okay, so in this case, early is an adjective modifying morning, which is noun. So all you have to do is that you have to look at the word it modifies, and in this case, if it's modifying a noun, then it's an adjective. If it's modifying a verb, then it's an adverb. Now we've already taken how we can locate the adjective or adverb in terms of asking questions. Okay, for example, an adjective answers the question of, let's get an adjective here. Adjective. It can answer the question of what kind. Okay, and how many, which one, and how much. Okay, so answer these any of these questions. So I might say the garment is new. Okay, so here new is a predicate adjective modifying garment. Similarly, you can answer the question of how many. There are 10 pairs on my desk. Okay, so here answers the question of how many pairs, and the answer is 10. In this case, it's an adjective. Similarly, you can answer the question of which one. Now, which one? Usually, the answer of that is a pronoun that modifies that noun. For example, you can say, this board is hideous. Okay, so which board? This board. In this case, this is an adjective that modifies board. Similarly, you can ask the question how much. How much usually talks about non-countable non-countable noun, or just a description. For example, you might say the trip was short. Okay, so in this case I'm defining the trip with the description of short as a predicate adjective following the linking verb. Okay. In terms of adverbs, so I'm going to write here adverbs. They answer the questions of when did it happen. This is the adverb of time. Okay. And where did it happen? And that's the adverb of place. How did it happen? Adverb of manner. The manner of happening. And the to what extent did it happen? So in terms of adverb of time, which is answers the question of when, you might say yesterday, comma, I bought a new jacket. Okay. So yesterday is the adverb of time, showing the time of the action, which is the action of buying. That's the adverb here, modifying the verb bought. Okay. And notice that yesterday can be placed away from the word bought, as we discussed before. And you can also place yesterday at the end of the sentence. As such, I bought a new jacket yesterday. And doesn't change the meaning of the sentence at all. Okay. And sometimes you might find this in some sentences. I yesterday bought a new jacket. It can also work, but it's not usually placed between the subject and the verb. So it depends on how you use that in the sentence. Similarly, you can use adverbs as adverb of time, or sorry, adverb of place. Okay, so you might say I live nearby. Okay, and answer the question of where do you live, and the answer is nearby. So that's the adverb of place. Adverb. But take note is that this word nearby is actually called an adverbial particle, because it's actually a preposition. So if I say, for example, I live nearby the lake, I live nearby the lake, then nearby is no more an adverb because it follows an object position, and so the whole phrase nearby the lake is a prepositional phrase. Therefore, nearby is not an adverb here. Okay, only when nearby is alone we consider this as an adverb modifying the verb. If it's followed by an object preposition, in this case nearby the lake, then it's a preposition and introducing a prepositional phrase. So we're going to move on to how, the manner. Okay, you can say I ran quickly. Again, quickly gives the manner of running. In this case, is an adverb. Okay, and the last one talks about to what extent you're doing a performance or doing an action. Okay, you might also define an adverb where the extent, for example, we quite often discuss issues about our community. Okay, so that's one example of to what extent. Often answers to what extent, modifying discuss, and quite modifies often, which is the adverb. So that's an adverb modifying an adverb, and often is an adverb that modifies the verb. Okay, so to what extent do you discuss it? Often. And to what extent is often? It's quite often. Now notice that quite often can also be placed away from the verb we can say we discuss issues about our community quite often. So you can place here. Okay. Some writers also place it at the beginning of the sentence. It doesn't matter a lot, but usually it functions well if it's before the verb or at the end of the sentence.